Hola, ¿qué tal? Aquí Julio Monroy desde Delta Records. Hace tiempo que no hacíamos unos lives por las épocas navideñas y bueno, inicio de año. Y hoy tenemos un gran invitado, ya lo van a conocer. Este live va a estar todo en inglés, entonces, bueno, aquí vamos. Hi Michael, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Julio? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you here.
I'm sorry
Uh,
I'm not speaking Spanish. I apologize for that.
I apologize for my English, but I will try to do my best.
Your English is great. It's way better than my Spanish. Yeah. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. And we are with David Sikar. Hi, Sik, how are you?
Hi everyone, how are you? Welcome to this new episode of Producing with Julio Monroy. Michael, it's a huge honor to have you here. So thank you so much for taking this time with us. For the people watching, remember that you can actually ask questions through the platform on which you are seeing the live show, and I will, well, share them with both Michael and Julio. I leave you with the conversation.
Thanks,
Thank
David.
you.
Thanks for
Thank
having me,
you.
and thanks for all you're doing. Appreciate it.
Yeah, hard work, hard work. Thank you, Sik.
Yes.
Well, Michael, the first question that we have uh, for our guest is, can you tell us how did you begin with music, audio engineering, and everything?
Yeah. Good question. Well, I didn't intend to be an audio engineer. That wasn't, as I guess with a lot of people and a lot of careers, sometimes we don't always end up where we start. And I was in just the short, very short version of it was I was in college. I was playing in bands, or started playing in a band. I had played instruments when I was younger, orchestra bands, marching bands, things like that. um, Handful of different instruments: clarinet, trombone, violin. So I played a bunch of different things. In high school, I was playing trombone, and I always wanted to play bass. And trombone player sitting right next to me was a huge Jocko and Stanley Clark and Rush and like all sorts of Chris Squire, all sorts of like adventuresome bass player type stuff. And I kind of got into it. I grew up listening to Motown, and so I was into Jamerson and stuff like that. And this other thing, I was like, oh, this is really cool, and it's the same clef as a trombone. And I was like, oh, I could play this. And so then I got into it. And as soon as I got out of high school, I went to going to college, sold my trombone, bought a bass, and joined a band, and got going. And realizing I was going to school. Sorry, long story. I don't mean to be this long with it. I was going to school for math and computer science. I was a double major, and then playing in bands and working in restaurants and doing stuff, waiting and tables and and all the things you do. But I got to started playing in clubs, and I realized that there's somebody standing in the back twisting knobs, and I'm like, what is that? And the person was like, well, this is we're here to make you sound good. And I said, I thought that's what rehearsal was for. And they're like, well, yeah, that too.
But
But I realized that they were mixing live, and I was really fascinated. And so I went back, and I'm like, what are you doing? Tell me, and it was like, okay. And it just, after a while, it got to be that the guy, his name was Scott. Scott was running sound, and Scott said, hey man, I'm going to take a break. You run it for a little bit. And then it got to be, hey man, I'm taking the night off. You run it for a bit. And then it got to be, I quit. You're the new house sound man. And I was fascinated by live sound and what mixing on the fly really what it really meant, paying attention. And I think that's something that's really served me in the mastering world, in the sense that I have to hear something and be totally objective with what it is, but make a decision on the spot. I think it sounds like this. I think it could or should sound like this, and then enact it and then make it sound like that. And so live, you have one shot. You've got to pay attention to what's going on right away. And so like you have to be able to go, I see the singer just kick the kick drum mic away from the kick drum. How are we going to handle that? Here comes a guitar player getting ready to do a solo and shred. Get ready to ride, give it a little rise, see if their stomp pedal does it or if they don't. And so there's a certain amount of paying attention that I found fascinating. And that really led me from doing live sound to starting to work with bands I was in were started to record, and then I'd end up, being around and mixing. And I was like, whoa, studio is not unlike live, only you get to do it again and again and again. And I just got fascinated by that and started paying more attention and started asking questions and started working on stuff I was involved with. And then I started working on stuff. Other people come to me and they go, hey, would you, I heard what you did with that. Would you do it with this? And that got me more into the production engineering side than the playing side. I traveled and I played. I've gone to many countries around the world and spent time on buses and, and all of that stuff, and all fantastic and all part of the learning journey. But when I realized that I could really be helpful from a 10,000-foot view, helping people become the best version of themselves, how can they be most translatable? How can their message and their emotion and the, reaction they're trying to get to a listener by saying something creative and something artistic and meaningful and sharing that, the delivery vehicle of sharing that can have an impact on people sort of accepting of the emotion. And so I found that I had a talent and a desire to help people get their records out. I still play and I still do that, but the engineering side came from really getting in, and it also came at a time, I'll say, that the math and computer science part of school, we were just transitioning the audio world from analog. Digital was just getting started. This was the mid 80s. And so CDs had technically just been released, but not mass, we're just getting into that. And so production was also going from analog to digital. And my math and computer science skills or background was very helpful for me to help with this transition. And so I found myself at an apex of math, computer science, creativity, 10,000-foot view, objective, translatability, distribution with new methods of making digital masters and conforming that they are ensuring and making sure that they're exactly correct. They've conformed all the standards. They are the best they can be for distribution and duplication and stuff like that. And so I had just found that mastering became the apex of everything I was passionate and interested in. And I started doing it more than 30 years ago and haven't looked back.
Wow, that's amazing. So you play a lot of instruments, trombone, did you say?
I do. Well, I haven't played trombone in a while. I mean, I imagine I could make a little noise, but it would be probably painful to, everybody in the area, including wildlife. I still play bass. Got a band I play in now, actually a couple. I'm also I play guitar and do some keyboard stuff. And I'm a Hammond. I traveled and played in a Southern rock band for a while, playing guitar and B3. And I play with a group of folks that we sit around a kitchen table and swap songs as a gig. And everybody has to play instruments and everybody sings, and the only rule is no more than 2 guitars. So we had to have other things. So I picked up the accordion. Another guy brought a dobro. Somebody else brought a mandolin. Wow. We all do stuff. And so then I started picking up the accordion. And I can't say that I'm an accordion player, but I play the accordion. I make noise.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
amazing. And do you record music? Your music?
I push myself as a mastering engineer. I promote myself that way, and I do so very intentionally. And maybe we've talked about this before, but I started recording and mixing and producing, and I still do that. And live sound, I still do that. Not so much with any of them at any given time, but always doing something. I'm in the middle of producing a record that I'm recording and mixing right now, and a handful of things I've got in process of. Sorry, look at my other screen up that way. A handful of projects in process of mixing some Atmos projects, also on top of mastering stuff, and so. I do those other things. I don't push myself that direction. I'm a little protective of earning the right to be a mastering engineer, like working my way up to it by doing other things, but I don't see it as a hyphen to the rest of the stuff I do. Like I want to be careful that a Swiss Army knife that has a lot of tools in it may have a lot of tools, but none of them are really particularly excel at being the best tool in the knife. I'd rather be really good at what I do, at one thing, and say, like, this is what I do. So I
Yeah,
promote
yeah, I
myself as
understand.
that. I still have fun. I like to keep making records and doing things on the creative side because one, it also informs me about who's coming in. When I'm working with somebody on a record, I know what it takes for them to get to me.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know
a lot of
what they
work.
had to go through to be there and how special it is. And I'll be honest with you, this day and age, there's so many options for mastering. Many of them either self or AI or other things that I would highly, highly not recommend. So, by the time somebody chooses to work with me and says, "Hey, let's do that," man, they get 100% of my attention and focus and skill and whatever it is, because it's not easy, and it means a lot that they've gone this far to utilize my skills for their record.
Yeah, of course. And do you think
Any mastering engineer that is a full, and I don't mean just me, but I just mean, like, mastering engineers in general, is that the people who master specifically, that's what they do. We see this all the time. Everybody that comes to us, we know what it takes for them to get there, and appropriate respect and everything, reverence for what they do.
yeah, but do you think that a mixing engineer, mastering engineer, uh, needs to be a musician or needs to play any instrument, or it is important for that kind of work?
I think that's a really good question. I know some fantastic engineers who can't play a note. You know,
Okay.
they could walk up to the piano and miss. so, so I don't think it. I think it has to. I think as a mastering engineer, a mix engineer may be a little different. We're thinking about balance and perception and the
Mhm.
understanding how music works. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a player to understand it. Like, you don't have to be a chef to know what good food tastes like. But it certainly does help to understand how it was put together to maybe understand the complexities that you taste. So in that sense, I'd say that you could one could be a fantastic engineer without necessarily being a musician. Not the most common thing in the world. There's usually some background, but yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, it depends of the people and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, can you tell us when did you begin to mix in immersive in Dolby Atmos?
My head and hair standing up. There we go. I wish I went like this. Sorry. I started doing immersive. Like I built my first surround room was in 2001. So my partner Paul Stubblebine at the time is also mentor, and Paul and I still are co-owners of a label called the Tape Project. We only release quarter-inch tape from the original analog masters as a format. I won't get up on my soapbox and say that's the best analog format. If you're going to release analog, tape is the way to do it, not vinyl. That's a soapbox I'll stay off of for the moment. But when Paul and I moved into Coast Recorders on Mission Street in San Francisco in 2001, we built 2 surround rooms, and we had surround. We did the SACD authoring. We had the Sonoma system, and so I've been doing that since. Off and on, I moved to another studio a handful of years later, 2015, I think it was, and moved from 5.1 to 7.1. And a couple of years later, so somewhere around 2017, 2016, 2017, I added the height speakers, and I started at that point. I was in 714, and then went to 914, and then went to 916, and the Sony format and the Oro 3D format. So I'm set up. You can't see speaker wise. Actually, what you're looking at here is the rear left speaker, and that is the left side speaker. So anyway, I'm set up in this room for mastering, knowing that I have to deliver all the formats. I'm set up for the Sony format. I'm set up for the Dolby Atmos format, and I'm set up for the Oro 3D setup.
Wow, wow. And I see some Grammys there.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
you're yeah, and the little side screen. There's a few behind me. If you're showing full screen, yeah, there we. Wait, this is reverse, so I'm going the wrong way. Wait, where are
yeah.
we going here? Let's try this. There we go. Well, here I'll
Uh-huh.
turn. There's you know, yay. And records. I'm slamming them, but I have them. So, but there's also my tape machine right there too. Right there. Sorry. Tape machine and turntable, and you can see some other stuff. And this backwards thing, I'm in the wrong direction. There we go. So there's some gear behind me. It's not the console that's here
Yeah,
in front.
yeah. I don't
Yeah,
know
I've
if
been fortunate enough. Yep. Sorry.
David, do we have any pictures of that?
We do, and we actually have some information about the projects as well. So it would be great if you can actually tell us a little bit about them. I'm gonna show the slide.
Sure.
So we actually
Okay.
took this from your webpage.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
So
We'll take a
here,
look at it. Okay. Well, okay. So, I mean, you want me to tell you a little bit about each one of them? Is that
yeah, like general information about what the project was about.
You have
well? I'll start because I see the first one I
Alicia
see
Keys?
there, Alicia Keys, Diary of Alicia Keys. So that was last year, Best Immersive last year. And
Wow.
there's another one you see. There's the Alicia Keys record, second over or third one over there. Um, I've been honored and fortunate enough to work with Ann Mincelli, who is Alicia's right-hand person, and with Eric Schilling and George Massenberg. The four of us had gone through, and we've done now every Alicia record. We started this project way back. We actually started this project before Atmos was Atmos Music. It was only Dolby Atmos for cinema, and we started this project of every one of her records. We did a couple of songs. We did Underdog, I recall, as the very first song we did as a proof of concept. And Alicia, very forward thinking, super sharp, super bright. Alicia was like, I want to get into this. I want to know this. I want to know what it sounds like. Let's do a song. Let's see what it sounds. Let's start this and see what happens. And so she did and kudos to Anne and Alicia, absolutely. What I still think is the best way to go back and do this is to remixing stuff that has records that have already been recorded would be go back to the original files. Stems don't work. Stems, this is a soapbox I'll just get up on. There's an exception to every rule and all of that kind of stuff. And so I don't want to say definitively, but in general, stems are made for recreating the stereo mix. They're not there to be they're not the basis of a good immersive mix. The stereo stems that are being delivered by labels or required by labels for delivery right now are requiring them so they can recreate the stereo mix by pulling out elements or do things for sync licensing or commercials or, making edits or doing something that they own the rights to be able to do something to. But those pieces and parts are not what makes a good immersive mix. You need to go back sooner. And so with Anne and Alicia, they went straight back. Like, we're going back to the original files, 2-inch tapes, sessions, whole thing. And we did her entire catalog in both Atmos and in Sony 360, and fortunate enough to have won 2 Grammys for that so far. They haven't all been
Wow.
released yet. She's kind of trickling them out. I think about half of them have, but and it's just a team. I love the teamwork aspect of it. I'll just say that it's one of the things about being a mastering engineer too is being part of the team. To me is where the end result become greater than the sum of the parts.
Hmm.
Those other records that were up there, I saw. So there was one Chanticleer. There were 2 stereo records, so nominees, right? Okay, and so I see the Mason Bates was Best Engineering Classical, and the Chanticleer Sings Christmas was Best Engineering Classical. In stereo, an honor on both of those. And I'll just say that, in our world of engineering, you don't get much pickier than the classical engineers. I mean, kind of the pickiest, most precise lot there is. And so I don't want to say necessarily that's the pinnacle award for me, but in a way, the best engineering classical is, as an engineer, one of the best, in my opinion, like you know, the people that vote on that and go through that. So that's super picky and super, you know, detail oriented for lots of things that pop records don't get, you know, uh, um, dissected for, you know, that kind of thing. And anyway, so those were super great. The other ones, and yeah, that just makes me super honored for those. The other ones I saw that you had up there, the Ray Charles is this year. So cross your
Yeah,
fingers, Ray Charles, you know, in 2
trust.
weeks we'll know. That would be number 6, and I would not say no. That would be awesome. That was an amazing experience working on that record. For one, hearing Ray Charles, you know, going back to the original
Yeah.
files. So we, you know, again, we did original files with this. Eric Schilling and I worked on this together, along with John Burke. Herbert Wattle is involved as well, part of the process, project. But super happy, and just to hearing those, you know, Ray sing, and, you know, what were his last recordings, and just the emotion in the voice and all that. So just going back to those files, I mean, you know, I'll say this from a standpoint of, yeah, I know I'm privileged, but I'm sitting in this seat. But man, I wish people in the world could hear the stuff that we hear in all of the studios that are working on immersive audio, hear it in its
Uh-huh.
full resolution and full speaker complement, rather than, you know, the dumbed down way we have to do it right now with distribution. I mean, I totally get it. File size, buffer size, bandwidth, all that kind of stuff. I'm looking forward to the day that people can hear it the way we hear it on a daily basis. Um, I saw there were some other ones in there. There's some other nominations on that
Yeah,
list. I think I saw the
Michael,
George Strait.
Michael,
Oh, go ahead.
did you ever think that maybe a few years ago that you were going to mix Ray Charles?
No, I mean, you know, I I'll be honest. I'm still the guy that I can't believe, pinch me. I can't believe I'm sitting here in this. As a kid, I was the guy who was syncing film strips and cassettes in high school and junior high. I was the AV guy. Like, you know, my very first tech job, my very first non-fast food job, frankly, without working at McDonald's, was I became, at 17, I was a projectionist at a movie theater. So I got to, at a
Uh-huh.
10plex, I got to put together movies on the big platters, and I got to maintain the machines, and like I learned about optical soundtracks because of them, you know, going through, and
Yeah.
you know, it was just fascinating. And so, you know, the fact that I'm sitting here doing this just blows my mind. We talked about this before we got started, and so here we are on social media. I'm not much of a social media person. I put my head down, do my work. I'm here to serve my clients and then do the best I can. And I kind of pulled my head up and was like, whoa, I kind of got to where I wanted to be, and then some. So I far exceeded any hopes and dreams I feel like I ever would have gotten as that kid doing
Mhm.
film strips, or as that bass player or that trombone player in high school and the bass player in college. Like, I'm amazed, honored, the people I've met along the way, the friends, the experiences, the all of that related to how I got to sitting in this seat right here. Wouldn't trade it for the world. Can't believe it. Wake up every
Yeah.
morning, grin and ear here. Just
Yeah,
amazing.
that's it's amazing, and you have had so much success winning Grammy awards every year. Can you tell us what makes a successful immersive project work?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, the successful immersive, I think one of the things that the Recording Academy looks at with trying to determine what makes a good mix. I guess we got to think about it for a second, is that you think about everything from classical to jazz to rock and pop and old records and new records and EDM and techno and rap and hip hop and reggae. And like, so every genre is different. And the application of spatial audio, immersive audio, in that world is, well, let me back it up and say it a different way. As engineers and producers, our job is to translate the emotion that the creative person is trying to get across. They want it to sound, bright, loud, dark, compressed, reverb, delays, guitar heavy, vocal heavy, like whatever it is. Our job is to help somebody realize their vision. The best thing we can do is to serve the song. And when you're thinking about immersive, if you're at a symphony, you're not going to have the violin solo or the piano solo in a, piece fly around your head like you would with a helicopter. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But if you're the Flaming Lips and you're wacky to begin, cool and wacky to begin with, like, for example, the Yoshimi Battles the Robot in 5-1, fantastic record, love it. David Friedman, awesome. I love what he does. He's got, in some cases, the drums are moving around your head and everything else stays still. Well, you'd never do that with a rock band, but with Flaming Lips, because of who they are, it makes sense and it works. And so the very first thing that makes a good immersive mix is serve the song, serve the artist. What gets across what they're trying to get across? I just did a couple, maybe it was a month and a half ago now, solo. Well, I guess it was a little bit longer than that, but a solo grand piano record in Atmos recorded at Abbey Road. And you say, one instrument, how is this going to be, anything? But it was awesome. I mean, it's a piano, and it's in a room, and you are standing there next to the piano listening to it, and it works. But if anything was moving around or flangers or doing stuff, it makes it a different record. And so our job is to help people get their immersiveness across, or their emotion across. And to your question of what makes a good immersive mix, is it listening to it? Does it feel like the artist's intent is being expressed? Is it shiny objects whizzing around just because they can, or do they make sense? Does it feel like it's supposed to feel? Do you get something out of it? And so being able to listen back and go classical, jazz, rock, hip hop, blues, there are elements of things you listen for that are not genre based that helps a good mix. Phase cancellation, balance, EQ, getting it mastered. Believe it or not, I mean, here I'm a mastering engineer. I was one of the very first on the planet doing this. The mastering is, I'd say, way more important in immersive audio than it is in stereo. There are way more possibilities for things to go wrong, and people are just taking their mixes and putting them out. And I'm of the mindset is I think immersive audio is awesome, and I wish everybody was putting their best foot forward, knowing that people are judging whether this is going to move forward. And I mean, judging like fans or artists. Do they want to do this? Does this make sense? Does it serve their music? If people get a bad experience, they're going to go, I'm going to listen to the stereo. It's fine. So we should always be putting our best foot forward in doing so. I was heading down a path there. Yeah. I'm sorry, that was a long way to answer your question about what makes a good immersive mix, but there's a lot that goes into, and serving the art is first and foremost. Does it make sense?
Yeah, of course. And do you have any rules for the panning position of the instruments, or every mix is different?
That's a great question. Yeah, every mix is different. And I'll say that one of the things I like about immersive audio is the dialogue that we have with the artists or the engineers or whoever's involved in the project. What are you trying to accomplish with this? And so, in stereo, we've built our workflow over the last 60, 70 years into a way that just does, that we're just going, great, here's how you make records. Now we're having to stop and think about it and back up a minute and go, well, if I'm going to mic this, is close miking the best idea? Maybe I should move the mic back from the speaker a bit and get some more airflow or distance, because that actually, then I don't have to, in an immersive mix, process it, because it already is distant. It already has sort of that sound. Yeah. And so I love that it's making us rethink how we're making records in the first place.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Sig, do we have some questions?
Oh, yeah.
We do have questions from the community. We've got this one from Instagram that I think it's pretty interesting. We don't talk a lot about music projects that are intended to be immersive from the start. How do engineers approach this type of compositions, and how is the relationship between the engineer and the composer?
Ooh, awesome. Great question. Kudos, whoever asked that one. I love the fact of starting with, and I'll say through trial and error and process and working on projects, records, and so you asked me earlier about mastering, and I gave an answer a little bit about hyphens and mixing, and mastering engineers should not be the mix engineer and all. I needed to learn, like, going through getting into this world. If I put my hat on many years ago as a mix engineer in the background, I needed to learn how to mix in immersive audio. And so I've done the deep dive many years ago to get into understanding what makes a great, immersive mix, or figuring this out. And because clients come to me and say, hey, how did you do this? Or what's going on here? Or I'm looking at doing this. How do I get into it? Or I'm listening to this, but what am I listening to? So then I can be a consultant and help people get over that hump and start getting into making records. One of the things I've learned is that, again, like I said about stems a little bit ago, is that stems are built or designed to recreate the stereo, not the immersive. And so in stereo, having two speakers, we're trying to cram a whole lot of information into left and right, which means we're doing a lot of compression, we're doing a lot of EQ carving, so things aren't, you can hear individual instruments rather than things covering themselves up. And so, we're looking for this kind of thing. And we do a lot of carving to things to fit out of two speakers. But if you start with the immersive first, I think you'll find that it's a lot easier. You can't hide things. In a stereo mix, you can hide bad edits, blunt, something else goes from one track to another, or, you hear, if somebody doesn't clean up noise hissing out of a file or something like that. As soon as you spread it around, you hear all of that stuff. And so I'd say that you get better work done by getting good balance and good tonality by starting with the immersive mix first and then do the stereo afterward. I think what you'll find is the stereo becomes less hammered and less crushed and a little more lively and open, but the immersive is way better because you're not starting with something so hammered and crushed and EQ'd and trying to put it back. Gives you a better handle on what's happening. But to your question about how to do this, I'd say take it a step further and think about this when recording a record. Think about mic techniques and placement. Then, you got a speaker cone and a mic right up on it. You're getting very little waveform development. You're just getting to this. Now, that may be nice and direct and in your face, but that's not what immersive audio is. It's not direct and in your face. That's trying to compete out of two speakers. If we move the microphone back a little bit and start to get some waveform development in there, it sounds different, but it feels different. And if you start to think about things, miking things with distance in mind, and then you put them behind a speaker, like let's say I've got, a guitar amp and I'm back about a foot or foot and a half or something, and I want it to come out of that speaker over there behind me, but I don't want it to sound like it's there. I want it to sound like it's a little further back. Well, if I mic it like this and I place it there, it already sounds like this. I don't have to put a reverb on it and then cause other problems with phase cancellation and, coherence, lack of coherence, whatever it is in the, as things are folding down, as we, inevitably have to get down to binaural mix for a lot of folks to be able to hear it. But if we start with good techniques, for example, one of the records that you showed on there, a nomination last year for George Strait, Chuck Ainley, who I love working with. Chuck is, one of my favorite engineers of all time, and I love working with him. He's, he tracked that record. He tracked. There was one Lyle Lovett record we did recently as well, where brand new. He did quad mics over the drums, and you mic things from different spaces. Think about it differently. So as he was mixing or recording quad drum overheads, now we've got the ceiling kind of covered, and it feels great. And it doesn't feel like anything other than the drums are just expanding in this way that is not above you, in front of you, but just sort of above and around you in that sense. And so I think that looking at immersive audio from the start is a better way to get into it. The other side, sorry, I'm talking a lot about this, but the other thing you asked is about arrangements and production. And I think that there lies a great opportunity to talk with the artists about, what do you want to come out of this? Should these background vocals be having a conversation with each other? Are they additive to it? Are they support? Like, what role do things have? And then when you think about the roles, what are you trying to get across? And maybe that's this speaker talking to that speaker, or this side and that side are doing a little back and forth, or front and back, or top and bottom, or maybe there's some things. So I'd say that the opportunity is also the dialogue about the end results.
And Michael, when you are mixing, do you put your headphones to check the binaural rendering, or how does it work?
Great question. Yes, I do. I have to. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
I have 3 sets of headphones, and you got to check the binaural. You got to check the MP4 because Apple Spatial is different than the binaural. And so I have the Apple headphones and non-Apple headphones, and then open-backed and closed-backed and sound bars. I've got a Ambio sound bar. I've got a Sonos system, and actually one of the Sony speakers. And so, that's my job, is I got to know translatability, and I have to test it on all of these things. And so that's part of the job.
There's a lot of people mixing in headphones. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you can get a lot of work done in headphones. I think one of the barriers to immersive audio is, well, for one, speakers, but facility or ability to listen. The second problem or issue we have with immersive is budgets, because it takes time and it's work. And we all know it's hard enough to get the funding to make a stereo record these days, to do it right. Now you're going to add this other layer of complexity. If you're starting from tracking, you're going to use this other layer of complexity from inception, and then you get into mixing, and then, and so now you've got a handful of, so it increases the budget, it increases the time frame and the scope of the record itself. However, headphones gives one an opportunity to be able to do a lot of work. I'll go back to Chuck Ainley real quick. Let's go back so Chuck did. We worked on Frampton Comes Alive together. So Chuck mixed it in Atmos, and I did the mastering. And an iconic record like that has audience. It has sounds. Let's say in this case audience, but it has sounds that are so iconic, ingrained in the collective unconscious, that if that little woo doesn't happen, or those claps at that one point, or there's a firecracker that goes off in those. And so in one of the songs in there, people don't know what that is, but it's a firecracker, and it's left in. And Chuck had to go through and find all of the applause. This was over many nights in different places. He had to find the absolute correct applause, so everybody knew it sounded the way it did. And so there was some forensic work done in that. You can do a lot of work in headphones without having to be in a studio to be able to do that type of stuff. You're doing the forensics to find all of the files. For example, some of the Alicia stuff we did, Alicia was, it was not out of the question that in the mastering session for the stereo record, she'd record a vocal part or an interstitial or something. We'd have to go find those things that were done, at the time, that were additive, track-wise for that. Oh crap! What was that? I was on a train of thought. Oh man, what was I saying? What was the question again? I was wrapping back to the question.
We were talking about the mixing headphones.
Oh, the headphone. Yeah. So I'm sorry. I got so thinking about the project, I got wrapped up in the project and got distracted by my own brain. The headphones are great, and it's definitely worth checking out to know what your compatibility is going to be. Like if you use Logic, for example, or if you're not a Logic user, but you want to know what Apple Spatial sounds like, you can live time through Logic. You can listen to the Dolby binaural render, and you can listen to Apple Spatial. So you can know when you're doing mixes, I would say pay attention to that. I've got a project I'm getting on later today. I was pointing at the email here that just came in is something I've got to do. And I'm not going to say what it is at the moment, but it's a three record by a pretty big band, well-known band. But the consultation with the mix engineer was great, because it's not the first record we've worked on together, and we have that dialogue back and forth. And one of the things that he was doing was really paying attention to binaural. And I think one of the things was the binaural became more, and he and I have talked about this, but I think one of the things is the binaural became more important, in perception than the speakers, and it got a little out of focus to where on speakers it didn't sound as good as it could. There's definitely a compromise there, but one thing I'll say is that we know what speakers sound like. We have
Yeah.
a social agreement. Like, we know what a good space, we know reverbs, we know time, diffusion, all that kind of stuff. Headphones, because we're trying to bring a whole bunch of channels down into 2 channels to try to play back like this, we're still working on the mechanics, how the brain perceives, how fold down works, how is localization out of 2 channels possible? How do you achieve these things? So those things are in development and still changing and still building. I mean, again, I'm pointing at them here, the open ear headphones, closed ear headphones, your ears, my ears. That gets into HRTFs and having personalized listening to know that I'm listening the best I can for what my ears do. Headphones are way more personal than speakers. They're so much closer that the individual differences of each person comes across differently in that headphone work. And so, Sony's got the VME, the virtual mix environment, where they map you in a room and you can then now be virtually in that. There's the visual virtualizer, the Smith Research that does its version of that. Dolby has their there's a whole bunch of companies that are doing different versions of listening to immersive, dear reality, dear VR. There's a whole bunch that allow you to listen in headphones. My caution is, you can do a lot of good work, but don't make final decisions on headphones. Take it to speakers, always.
Yeah,
Even if you're doing everything yourself, just go listen on speakers somewhere, somehow, before it's released.
Yeah, it's better. And for example, if someone hires you to mix a song in immersive audio, but that person is not in your city, and you have to send the file, and they are going to hear different than in your studio. So it's difficult, or because I think that you have, maybe do you have any experience of that with a client?
Yeah, I mean, and like I said early on, thinking about Alicia, like that was one of the hardest things, was get her to approve, because she was always on the go. So we would have to find times to book a room when she was in a city somewhere to be able to get her to listen to files. We finally got to a spot with her that worked out well, is that we managed to get a couple of the Sennheiser Ambio sound bars, which I think are still the pinnacle of, the 5.1 soundbar playback. They 5.14. I'm gonna make sure I get the height in there. But we got her set up in one of her places, so she could walk in and just sit down and listen and knew. So we got to the spot where she was comfortable enough to go, I know what I'm hearing here. Thumbs up, or can we change this or move that? With other clients, what I have to do is, there's, again, back to the consultation thing. I think this is a huge part of immersive audio, is there's a ton more communication, like being able to have a conversation. How are you listening? How are your fans going to listen? How do you want to, can you check in speakers? No, you're on the road. What kind of system do you have? You got headphones? Okay, cool. What kind of headphones? So sometimes it's sending the MP4 files so somebody can, because they want to hear Apple Spatial. Sometimes it's the binaural file. I do have folks that have sound bars and have ways to listen sometimes. And sometimes, the folks that I'm working with are the engineers, and they're just listening back in the studio that they mixed, which brings up a huge asterisk at that point, is room tuning. We came into this from years gone by, having a process of mastering, of being able to go out to the car to listen, or make a cassette and go home, or make a CD and go home and listen to it in different places. We're just now getting to the spot. I think if you look at Dolby specs, I believe they said there are over 2,000 now studios around the world that are making Dolby music, which is awesome. A couple of years ago, there was only 500, and a couple of years before that, there was only 4. And then there was one.
It's growing a lot. Yeah.
And so in doing so, oh crap, I lost my train of thought one more time. How did I do that?
You were
Wait, what
talking
did you
about
just ask me? I can't. Sorry.
Alicia Keys
Oh yeah,
hearing
yeah,
your
yeah.
mixes.
The listening, and so getting things out and getting. So sorry, I worked till late last night, and I'm on my fourth cup here. So here we go. Um, the referencing was hard. Now, one thing I do use is and finding out how people are listening, and then talking to them through. And again, there's Apple headphones and stuff like that. John Reichbach, who is artist, well, Sonic Solutions, Sonic Studio, started an Amara as a high-end listening software, developed Artist Connection, and it is a browser-based listening platform that'll play all the immersive formats. And so, if I
Hmm.
have somebody wants to hear the MP4, let's say a 916, because it'll play back the discrete files, as well as the binaural and the original stereo to compare. I can put them in folders and send somebody a link, and then they've got an app, whether it's on, which really worked for somebody traveling. So it works on
Yeah.
their phone, and they can listen. And so I use that a lot as a reference because it's very user friendly without nobody has to install anything or do anything. And I know it's bit for bit. So
Yeah. 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 Well,
so
thank
the
you. Thank
referencing,
you.
you're right. Oh, and and back to that other point is what I wanted to make is that early on having this is where I was headed. I got lost off my trail. Back when there weren't that many studios, but even now that there are still a bunch of them doing it, you got to remember that everybody's tuned their room to some spec,
Hmm.
whether it's their own personal preference or Dolby's recommendation or somewhere in between. And when somebody has mixed in that world and they send it to me and I make adjustments for translatability and I send it back to them and they listen back in the same spot they made those decisions, it's going to be different because their room is tuned differently. And I've just undone things or done things that they didn't do for translatability because of their room. And I've had some folks get really offended by that. And they say, well, this is the way it's supposed to be and this is the tuning and it needs to sound right in this. And I disagree in that the tuning is not something that gets decoded. Use whatever tuning. I'll tell anybody whatever, like you use any tuning that works good for you. Any particular person as an engineer sitting in their room needs to know what their room sounds like because every decision they're making is based on their perception, and the tuning of the room is the perception. But like, for example, in the stereo world, I'm working with somebody and I do a record and I say, hey, by the way, I noticed that I'm adding about 250 hertz pretty much every song at about a dB or so. You may want to look at the tuning of your room. You may have a bump in that you're now mixing out that I got to put back.
Hmm.
So if you're mixing with a curve that's doing something like this, and I make it even by doing this to it, and then you listen back to it in your place, it's going to be even worse. So trust me, trust the mastering engineer who is looking at translatability when getting things back in one's room, because the referencing for clients is hard, but sometimes it's not any more easy for references for clients that the engineers that actually have rooms and speaker systems to listen to.
Yeah. And how big is your room? See, do we have photos of
I do
or
on the
Michael?
website. I don't know if I have anything handy. They're probably buried and dropped. There you go.
Look
There's,
at,
yeah.
yeah. Wow.
And
It's
it's
beautiful.
wider and deeper. I mean, fisheye lenses to get everything in there. Those are the wide speakers there, and so that's just really the front of the room, but it's kind of skewed a bit, because there you go. Yeah, that's a little bit more perspective. Hey, I'm glad you had these pictures. Thanks, David.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And I finally get a window too, by the way. I'll tell you, this is the first room I've had of all the studios in the last 30 years that I've worked at. This is the first one I've been able to. I built this and took everything I learned to be able to build it the way I wanted. Walls where I wanted them, dimensions. You asked about the dimensions. It's about 19 by front to back, or is it 20 or so by 16 by 11. So we knew the dimensions. I worked with Bob Hodis, my acoustician. We knew the dimensions of the room I wanted it to be before we even started digging, because about half of it's underground. So, but I did know that because half of it was underground, I could get a window really high up that didn't interfere with the sound, and I get to see some natural light. I have it closed at the moment because the sun is coming in and was causing shadows on this,
Yeah. Yeah.
on our call.
Ah, beautiful. Beautiful
Yeah.
space. Hey, Sig, do we have questions for Michael?
By the way, I can stay a little bit longer. I know this was set for an hour and I've been
Yeah.
gabbing a bit. So if there's questions, I want to
Oh,
make sure we get to people's questions.
thank
Okay,
you.
great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you a lot.
Yeah.
We do have questions. We have a question from Abasaba. Michael, what would you say about an immersive version of Rudy Van Gelder's classic Blue Note recordings?
Depends on who's doing them, I suppose. Are they doing it in, you know, I mean, you could make it, yeah. That's a that's a tough question. I'd love to hear a great version of that. I mean, his recordings are fantastic. If somebody can make a great immersive version of that and take it further, awesome. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. I just did George Winston's December album in Atmos. Super fun. It was really great. You know, I wouldn't say necessarily. I mean, you know, like I talked about doing the acoustic piano from Abbey Road. Same thing. Bunch of mics, one instrument. If you took something like Take 5, you know, you've got 4 instruments and 4 mics. What would you do with it? I know some of the like Miles Davis stuff. I know that Steve Genowick, fantastic, well, human being and engineer. Steve had done things like go out and put speakers in the room and mic up a room that was similar in size to, or the exact same room that Miles Davis was in, to add that sound to something that was done. If you take the care and stuff in doing it with care and reverence and respect for the original intent of the recording, and it's additive to it, I'm all for it. If it's just upmixing a thing, you know, I've got people that will send me files and say, here's a mono mix. Can we do anything with this? You know, like, well, in Immersive, can you separate all the instruments? Well, yes and no. I mean, yes, you can to some extent. Does it sound musical? Mostly not. Is it the intent of the artist in the first place? Probably not either. So then why do it? I hope that answers the question. If done really well, I'd love to hear some of his recordings, Van Gelder's recordings. And I mean, just the precision of the engineering of the capture is fantastic.
Thank you, Michael.
Great.
We have another question from Andrea Navarrete. I would like to ask this question. What was the most technically demanding project you have worked on, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Good question. Let me think about that for a minute. I'm assuming that's any project.
Any
Yeah,
project.
yeah.
And mastering specifically, like,
Doesn't specify,
Yeah.
so we are open with the answer.
boy, let me think about that for a minute. I gotta,
Don't worry about it.
you know, they're all what here's, you know, okay, 10,000-foot view sort of response is, here's what I love about my job is that every day is different. Every record is different. How I may get a jazz record 2 days in a row, but they would be recorded by 2 different people at 2 different studios, and you know, one could be more of a fusion jazz and one could be more a traditional, or one could be techno jazz. Like just the fact that every day is different means that every day there's challenges to be met. I mean, I've had days where the most technically the biggest challenge is not the music, but the gear I'm using, the technology. I'll say that I've had my issues with networked audio. I mean, I come from I come from a standpoint, whatever, my background of building my own cables, because I was very particular about cables and soldering and solder and everything being spot on. And so I can't tell you how many times I've made DB25 harnesses for gear I've had over the years, and, you know, calluses and burned my fingers to, you know,
Well,
all of
that's
that.
perfect.
And now here we are with
Amazing.
networked audio, and I'll say that I've had some serious problems, like sitting here doing a session, all of a sudden something's working, and now the network decides some subnet mask is not going to be read, and now my whole system goes down, and I've got to, with a client, diagnose
Yeah.
a network problem. It just, like, that kind of stuff sucks. That's just, but that's maybe not what was being looked for as far as complicated sessions. I mean, I have had to do stuff. I'll say that, you know, there are very few times will I refuse to work on something, but there have been some things where I'm like, I can't agree with, I'm not gonna work on this. This isn't for me. here's a couple other people you should work on. Sometimes clients aren't a good fit, and being able to recognize that, what they want, or, I might not be the person. I'll say it straight up, is I'm not the person to go to if you want that crushed, loud, hammered, in your face sound. From one standpoint, I don't like it. It's not music. I'll say that. But I'm also a service provider, and I'm here to help people get to where they want to go. So I'll give an effort. I'll push something. I'll do what I can to get to where somebody wants to be. But a lot of times I'll have that conversation. It's like, I'm just not going to make this -6 to deliver it. It just goes beyond anything I've learned to do. I'll tell you, I'll give you 6 people you can go to right now. We'll do it for you. Just So there's sometimes there's those aspects of it, is that it's just, I'm not a good fit. And recognizing that sometimes clients aren't a good fit for us, and sometimes we're not a good fit for them. Totally fine. Not really answering your question about difficult. I mean, there are difficult things in decisions. Like, I've had difficult sessions where I've had the whole band in, and we go, great, we've mastered the record. It's, 4.5 hours later, we've done an entire record, feel good about it. Now we're assembling it, and they spend 5 hours trying to decide what order they want, and space here, not space here. Well, let's try it like this. And the bass player says, let's do that. The guitar player says, let's do this. And then somebody says, well, let's do this. And we spend 5 hours doing spaces and fades. And then they go, well, why is it 9.5 hours to do something we did in 4.5? I'm like, you guys weren't prepared, and we took all this time.
Yeah.
In the studio. Like, there's difficulties like that. Like, it's not really a difficulty, but some of the other difficulties are in conversations. It's hard to tell people that, hey, look, like, your vocal is out of phase and nothing else is. I can't do anything about this. I can put the vocal back by flipping the entire polarity but then now everything else is out. I'm sorry, you're just going to have to remix this, or sometimes, I'll have people go that they'll just, another difficult conversation is, and I'll go back to that hammering thing, is when somebody's taken something and made it so squashed that I have no room. It's already -6 and flat as a stick of butter. And I ask, hey, can you take the loudness things off the master bus? And they say, no, they can't, because their mix will fall apart. Their mix falls apart because they're taking dynamic processing off the master bus. Then their mix isn't that good to begin with. I'm sorry. If it's the master bus that's holding your mix together, it's not a good mix. And so it's difficult to talk to people like that. I mean, I'm trying to help, and I want them to make better records. I love music, and I want them to put their best foot forward. But sometimes it's hard to be able to go, I think you can do better.
And a musician, do you know when someone is out of tune and everything? So you a lot of sensitivity. You have a lot of sensitivity, So how
a lot of times those things
music
can't be fixed by the time they come to me too. Like, it's like, do you know that guy's,
though.
Trumpet player's out of tune? Yeah, that's what trumpet players do. All right. Just letting you know, I know. Can we do anything about it?
Yeah.
Nope. Okay, let's move on. Yeah. So that's kind of how the conversations go.
That's different. Yeah. More questions, David.
Thank you, Michael. We do have another question. Is from us to the world. Have you worked with cinema or soundtracks?
Yes, I have. Generally, though, the work that I've done has been for the audio release only of the soundtrack, and not things that are included in the movies themselves. And so different requirements, different levels, different process, similar outcomes. Well, I should say similar process, but, it might be something that there's an effects bed, a sound bed, a dialogue bed, it's different in doing so. There's a few of them there.
Well, Star Wars.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange. Wow.
Doctor Strange, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Again, you got back to a question you asked me earlier. Like, I just pinch myself when I wake up and realize, and I've been like the things that I've worked on and the people that I've been able to work with, my heroes. You mentioned, I mean, you made me point at the Grammys behind me, but I'll just a quick thought on that is that I unbelievably honored. I can't believe that I've got 5 so far. I say so far because you never know. Knock on wood, behind me over here, and the nominations and stuff. But I'll tell you the nominations, the we spend a lot of time, you guys are, this, we engineers, we producers, we spend a lot of time with our heads down in dark rooms, making records, making
Yeah.
music, and you really don't know, even more so now, post pandemic, we're all way more isolated. There's very few multi-room facilities anymore. We're kind of in our own bubble doing our thing. We have our video like this, like that you're doing, and thank you for what you're doing, is getting information out to people. So really, I have to say
Oh,
thank you to you for what you're
oh,
doing
thank
to the
you for being
community.
here,
So
Michael.
amazing. Because that is it's our next generation. But if you only get to interact like this, it's hard to sort of feel where your place is. And I'll say that the nominations for me was, and the wins, feeling like a peer amongst my heroes for that
Hmm.
moment, like being able to feel like, of all of the people that I look up to, they're doing all this stuff and they're all the voters. That's one of the things I like the best about the Grammys as well, is they're all members, they're all voting members who vote. So there's
Yeah.
not publicity and labels and artists,
Hmm.
labels and stuff like that. But so to be able to do that, and so for the people that I look up to the most, to be able to say that your record, something I worked on, belongs in that category, man, that just means the world to me. Like, that's just stunning.
It's amazing. No, thank you for being here with us. It's an honor. Like I wrote you in the mail.
Well, I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Well, that's why I love coming, we didn't talk about this yet, but coming down to Expo, and
Yeah.
yeah, so I am coming down, and I want to go, going to Tech de Monterey and teaching, and, the educational series that John Krivet's putting together, through Hey
Yeah.
Audio Student, and Neumann's been involved with it, and I've been very tied with them and some of the education series. And so, again, for us to give a chance to give back. So you're setting up the circumstances for us to be a part of giving information to the next generation. So thank you for all you do.
Oh, thank you, Michael. And yeah, let's talk about the Pan American Audio Educators Conference. It's
So yeah, there's going to be the Pan American Audio Educators Conference from March 29 to the 31st in Mexico City at the World Trade Center. It's going to be co-located and run currently with Soundcheck Expo, so you won't miss Soundcheck Expo. You're gonna be able to meet a lot of educators, developers, and thought leaders. We have this schedule here. You just have to arrive to Benito Juarez. Also, a huge shout out to the sponsors of the event. And well, we hope to see you all in Mexico. We're going to talk a lot about a lot of topics, artificial intelligence, workshops, and the idea is that every educator actually can share their ideas and their points of view. So it's going to be an amazing event. We hope to see you all there in Mexico.
Thank you, David. And
Yes,
you're
we
going to
do. We'll
share
be
your
there.
knowledge, right, Michael? You're going to share your knowledge in that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't miss it. I think I've been to the Soundcheck Expo 5 times now. I think I did it.
Oh,
I think I came down in like 2011 and 2012, and then came back. I think the last 3 years I've been there, and I love it. It's great. It's really it's well put on. It's at the World Trade Center is a fantastic facility, and
mm-hmm.
the food and the people and the students and everybody I meet and I get to talk to, like, just awesome. I'm not gonna miss it, and you shouldn't either. Nobody who's watching this should miss this.
Yeah. Nobody. And Michael, and this event that is making John Krivet, it's going to be great because there's going to be a lot of educators and audio engineers like Michael Romanowski. So it's amazing. Everyone is invited here. March
Yeah,
26th, I guess, is sick.
I think so. Yeah, I don't have my calendar up, but I'll take your word for it. So
Yeah,
it's blocked out on mine.
yeah. One week
Yeah.
of just audio. And are you
Yeah.
going to the NAM? Of course.
Yes. Yep. Are you gonna go? Are you going to NAM?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'll see you there. I'm gonna be there. Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I think I get down on Wednesday. Yeah, so I'll be there through Saturday, and I'll probably leave. I think I'm leaving. I'm gonna drive. It's too much
Oh,
information
really?
for but I think I'm gonna drive down, and yeah, just a little piece in the car. It's about a 6-hour drive for me.
Okay, it's
Uh,
okay.
so yeah, I got to come back down the next week for the Grammys, so I'll fly down for that. I think I'll just drive for this one and save the cost of 2 flights, and I'll just make a bunch
Mhm.
of phone calls in the car. And, listen to some music, maybe something for personal pleasure. Something I want to listen to.
Yeah, and this podcast, this is going to be a podcast. Tell us more about SICK, please.
Sure, you're gonna be able to find this conversation on streaming platforms in podcast format. It's going to be a little bit edited, but you just search for Producing with Julio Monroy and you will be able to see these episodes and all the other episodes that we have. I would actually like to say another thing. Remember to join our Discord. We have a new Discord page, so we're going to be discussing about audio production, Dolby Atmos, a lot of subjects. We are going to have access to exclusive content, exclusive videos. So the idea is for us to, well, share and be creative. You're going to be able to see a QR code in a second. That's it. You can actually scan the QR code here as well, and you can join the community. We are going to be talking a lot about audio in there, and you are going to be able to ask us questions as well, both to Julio, to me, and to everybody on the team. So you might not want to miss our Discord server.
Awesome.
Thank you, David. Well, Michael, we have talked like more than 1 hour, and I promised you that it was going to be 1 hour. I know that you're very busy, but I have a last question. Oh,
Sure. And if there's
it's not a
another,
question.
oh, sorry, go ahead. And I'll say that if there's another, other important
Yeah.
questions, I'll stay. But yours first, Julio. You get.
No, thank you. No, well, it's not a question, but audio is it's difficult. Music is difficult. And can you give us an advice or give an advice for the people who are beginning to learn audio, to learn music? I think that an advice from you, it would be gold for us, for me, for everyone.
So are you asking about? Well,
Any advice that you can give us?
yeah, I think that there's. I'm thinking about it. The sort of professional advice, and I'm a music fan. I got into this because I like music, right? We all
Mhm.
did in some way. We gravitated toward either being a performer, an engineer, or or both, or producer, or label, or all of the things that can be done in this world. The joy that we get out of it, or what we get into it, it's like the Beatles. The very last thing. The love you make is equal to the love you give. Your curiosity into
Wow.
creating music is what will give you back the joy of discovery. Play. I mean, that's why they call it playing an instrument. Play. Have fun. If you're an engineer, play. Have fun. I got a console in front of me. I've been messing with some plugins of things, and I just, something new comes up. Somebody goes, "Hey, will you test this and tell me what you think," or whatever. And so, first thing I'm going to do is put it on something that doesn't, that I can have fun with. It's not, it's not something that's going to, client's record or something that's going to get out there or whatever, but have some fun, explore it, kick the tires, enjoy what you do. I mean, this is a tough business, honestly. Julio, do you play golf? I know, weird question, right?
No, I don't play golf. I
Okay.
wish.
That's a weird question, but I got a point to it. There's a reason I ask you that question. Golf is like, it's one of those things that you go out and, let's say, I don't know, pick a number, 90 shots or something. So you're going to go out and hit 90 shots over the course of 18 holes, but 15 or 20 of those, or some percentage, are exactly what you wanted to do. You pictured it in your mind. You got the right
Mhm.
club, you saw the ball, he's like, I'm going to hit it through this, it's going to drop and do that. And you're like, okay, cool. Those 15 shots make those other 75 worth it. You go out there and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, okay, cool. This does it exactly. Our moments in this business are kind of that. We have our moments of slogging through the course and we're just trying to get out of the rough or, whatever it is. And some days are hard. Pay attention to those 15 shots, those moments that keep us here, those things that make us keep us coming back to being creative and trying a new sound or serving a client in a different way or doing something. Like I think one of the things we can do is keep grounded as to what our task is and what our service is and what we're doing. It's really easy to get wrapped up into social media and say, oh, well, so-and-so's, got this concert on the moon. I'm not on the moon. I must be less than. Well, no, it's just, it works for them. They're on the moon. They're doing their thing. That's fine. Be you. The best thing that anybody in our position as engineers can do is to be, honest, true, but facilitating, when doing something, do it right the first time so you don't have to undo it. Not skipping corners just because you think nobody's paying attention. Make the edit, do the piece, run the mic cable the right way. Like, just do good work. Those things are satisfying. People notice that. Like, there's a lot you can do in this world that doesn't. It's not necessarily about awards or recognition or things like that. But so be happy and do it because you love it. Do it because there's something that brings you back. You're providing joy and service and something to somebody else. That's what transitioned me into this side of the business, is because I really enjoy helping people put their best foot forward. And so I'd say to anybody getting started, look for doors. Don't go through closed doors, hard to go through. Don't be afraid to go through an open door and try something different, because you just may find some joy in some aspect that you're like, well, I never really thought I'd be in doing live touring sound or theater broadcast or teaching sound in a high school. Let your passions find you and just embrace them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Michael.
thank you,
Amazing.
Michael. We actually have a message from Justin Gray. He's saying, "Hey,
No
Michael
way.
and Julio, thank you for a great
Hey,
session,
Justin.
friends." So,
Hey,
hi,
Justin.
Justin. Thank you for being here.
Amazing.
Have you had
Thank you.
Justin on here yet?
He's
Yeah,
on Instagram. Yeah, he was
No,
he
is
was
he
here
coming? Are you gonna
in the
do?
show.
Are you
Yeah,
gonna do an interview
like
with him?
1 month ago, I guess.
like 1 month
Yeah.
ago we did. Yeah.
Oh,
We
you
have an
did?
episode.
Oh, right. You said that's right. Duh, because you sent me the link and said, "Here." And Justin goes, "Hey, we talked about you." All right, got it.
Yeah. We talk about you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, Justin. I'm still on my 4th cup of coffee. I hadn't gotten to 5 yet, if you're listening. But Justin's coming to Mexico City, so Justin will be there
Yeah.
this year.
yeah.
I just put him on the spot. We talked about it the other day, so now he's laughing. I can hear it from 4,000 miles away.
We
Like
also
3,000
have
miles.
we also have a
Just
comment
kidding.
from Jorge Cruz. Great to listen. A professional with such a huge experience. So they are telling, thank you, Michael, for taking this time with us. We have Abasaba. Yes, Julio. Thank you. Muchísimas gracias. And well, Michael, it's been a pleasure to have you here. It's a huge honor to have you here. I think that you have said a lot of important things, and you have
Yeah,
shared a
a
lot
lot
of
of.
experience, and it was amazing. It was really, really amazing. So thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, David, thank you so much. Julio, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Happy to, happy to come back at another time if you want to do this again and people have more questions and stuff.
course.
I'm always happy to answer questions. I think that's one of the funnest things, by the way, is that is involving people who are part of something, is they feel like they're being talked with, not talked at, by getting their questions and all. And so I love doing that. Anytime,
Well,
guys. Thank you so much for having me.
thanks a
And I'll see you
lot.
in Mexico
Thanks a lot,
City.
Michael.
Well, I'll see you at
Yeah.
NAM.
At NAM, then Mexico. Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Michael.
guys.
So
Really
I'm
appreciate
leaving all of you with Julio Monroy.
Well, thank you to everyone. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, David. All the people here connected. Um, Tomorrow we're going to have another live stream. We're going to be with Joe Baldrich from Ocean Way Studios, Nashville. So please don't miss the live. Bye bye.
Can I say awesome.
Back
Okay.
online.
We're still on. I gotta say, you
Are
gotta
we
see
on?
Joe.
We are on. We are
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize, but I'm just keep going. I don't know who's listening or whatever. But Joe is awesome. Joe, I will say, is responsible. I give Joe 1,000% props. Is that without him, I would not be where I am right now. I've known Joe since I lived in well before I lived in Nashville. You know, we were buds, still are, do stuff together, whatever. But you know, Joe is as responsible as anybody in this world for me being where I am, helping me find. I got a long story short was I was in Nashville. I lived there, grew up there, whatever, and then got a job offer at a place in San Francisco. And it's because of Joe that I ended up with the job offer. I decided to take a chance on it. And this is what I mean by saying open doors. I followed an open door that I wasn't quite sure. I was recording and mixing at the time. I didn't necessarily know what mastering was, but I got an offer and I followed the door and realized it was the apex of exactly what I was looking for. And I got here because of Joe. So
Thank you.
thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Michael. So you're
Everybody
going
tune
to
in.
tomorrow. You're going to be tuned in the live. Please stay in tune with Joe
All right.
tomorrow.
I'm considering this episode as our first episode with a post-credit scene. So
It's right. It's the
Okay.
wrap up afterward that
yeah,
everybody can watch.
yeah. Okay,
That's
so
kinda
thank you.
awesome.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a live
great.
stream.
Yeah, that's
We're
great.
number one. We're number one.
So, well, thank you to everyone that has connected with us, and again, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Julio, for creating this space, and we'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow at the same hour. So, take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you, guys.